It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Curt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Many innovations for the agriculture industry show promise in the lab and controlled small plot settings, but fall short when it comes to capturing complete data from the field. From the start, Intent built its business on bringing efficiency and effectiveness to field trials, helping clients reach their business goals. Since then, Intent has unveiled its InVision software, which works in conjunction with Intent's farmer trials network of more than 1,500 growers to maximize data collection and quality. Today, Intent's sole focus remains the same, to equip agribusiness with better data. But the manner in which Intent is able to collect, interpret, and model that data is light years ahead of what was previously thought possible. To learn more about Intent, visit intent.ag. That's intent, INTENT.ag. Welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. Today, I'm excited to welcome back a seasoned industry leader who brings over 2 decades of experience in the agriculture sector as Senior Vice President of Industry Sectors and Product Leadership at the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Our guest plays a pivotal role in shaping the strategic direction of agriculture and construction programs. With a background rooted in marketing, business development, and leadership, his journey reflects a deep commitment to driving innovation and progress within the industry. From Des Moines, Iowa, I would like to welcome Curt Blades. Welcome back, Curt, and thank you so much for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me on. It's quite an introduction there.
Well, can you give me a bit of a background on you and your role there at AEM?
Sure. Well, first, I guess the most relevant for conversations like this, I'm a farm kid from Missouri. In fact, Generation
Important.
6, we've got Generation 7 involved in the farm operation, and actually Generation 8 even in the farm operation right now in Northeast Missouri. Corn, soybeans, wheat, cattle. So that's what started me out. But I've spent my entire career sort of in this innovation equipment space within agriculture, and that's gives me a unique spot as I'm sitting right now, where we're talking about the cool things that are happening within the whole space. Honestly, the center of gravity is all around precision agriculture. It's around equipment. It's around data, and it's fun to be having a front row seat to see exciting technologies roll out.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about AEM is the reports that are released every couple of months, I believe, and they're always packed with information, and always look forward to those emails. But you just released the last month, the March 2024 Ag Tractor Combine Sales Report. So we're going to go over some of the highlights from that report. First of all, what's the significance of the recent increase in unit sales of 100 plus horsepower ag tractors in the U.S.?
Well, so Chrissy, for the last 30 years, we've been AEM has been producing the Tractor and Combine report, and that reports the monthly sales of certain classes of tractors and combines. And what's neat about having a study with that much history is you can really point to some very clear trends. It's pretty interesting. Like tractor sales kind of almost track corn prices 1-to-1.
Wow.
based on the based on historical data. It's not exactly that way, but it's pretty fun. So if you look at this most current month, tractor sales were kind of down across the board, with the exception of tractors above 100 horsepower. And that's a really interesting point because
Yeah.
those are true row crop tractors. We're seeing softness in small tractors. We're seeing softness in chore tractors. We're seeing softness in compact utilities. We're seeing softness in articulated four-wheel drives. But row crop tractors, those are the workhorses. That's what farmers used to plant. Those are what farmers used to till. So those are the things that you kind of maybe indicate that there's some psychology out there that even though we're dealing with some challenging times on commodity prices, there's overall optimism for the long-term value of agriculture, and that tends to reflect in the sales.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how does the growth in how does it contrasting with other tractor sizes? You said it's soft, but is there a big gap or what are you seeing?
We're seeing some quite a bit of softness in that small tractor market. Tractors that are under 40 horsepower. I mean, those aren't ag tractors just per se. Those are going to be more rural lifestyle. As a general rule, we saw that market just explode during the pandemic. In fact, we saw this like record numbers month over month. This was largely because of folks, they had some disposable income and they weren't able to take their trip to Europe or whatever, and so we're finding they were investing in their homes and their properties, and the small tractor market was a beneficiary of that. That reflected those markets for the last, say, 3 years. So I think what we might have found is that that market has been satisfied. So we've been seeing, that for the month of March, that market's down about 16%. And for the year, it's down about 17% year over year. So that's indicating that, it's a little bit soft there. Short tractors, those that are 40 to 100 plus, that's a little bit more reflective of the livestock market. Loader tractors, those type of things that are beginning to be in the agriculture space, maybe be some specialty crops, and they're a little bit soft right now. I think we have some seasonality. I think in the month of March they were down 6%, or down 8% for the year. So I think that's maybe could be some seasonality. That little bit of growth that we saw in 100 plus horsepower being up 3%. Again, nice and positive. That's more probably reflective of the replacement market. So that's kind of where that contrast is. Some of the other interesting numbers, we track four-wheel drive tractors. Those are big tractors. That's been an interesting one because, as you don't buy a big, you don't wake up tomorrow and decide to buy a big articulated four-wheel drive tractor. That's a $500,000 purchase. So you're planning ahead. So we were seeing real strength in those numbers last year. And I think just timing wise, the market might just be satisfied for now. So that's down about 12% for the year. But this time last year, we were saying, man, this number's up really a lot. So I think you have to look, 1 month does not necessarily a trend make.
Yeah, that's true. And how are these numbers comparing with the Canadian numbers?
As a general rule, the U.S. and Canada tend to track 1 to 1,
Mhm.
almost exclusively. Sometimes Canada's a little bit of a leading indicator. Sometimes the United States a little bit of a leading indicator. In this case, we're seeing almost the same trends in that small horsepower market being soft in Canada, continuing, same trends in the United States. We saw a little bit of strength in the 100 plus horsepower market. We do see some more strength in the articulated four-wheel drive market in Canada. But again, the inverse of what I was referring to earlier, where the US market was really strong last year in that space, wasn't as strong in Canada. So that's one of those where it was a four-wheel drive market might have been the US was the leading indicator. US was the leading indicator that Canada's lagging just a little bit behind. But so seeing some strength in that market, up about 30% for the year, that gives you some hope that maybe those needs are getting met as well.
That's good. And then how are these current sales figures? Are they aligning with industry forecasts?
Well, we're not in the business of predicting what the future is, but I'm sure many of your listeners are seeing the same news that I'm seeing. There is, um, I think, 2024 is going to probably be a little bit of a down year for net farm income. I think all indications are. pointing to that, whether that's related to global demand or related to the input supply. I think that's sort of what we're expecting. I think there's some early indications that that might be the beginning of a little bit of a slow cycle. So we're preparing for it. But I would also say is that farmers, by their very definition, are optimistic and they have hope for the future. And although there are some storm clouds out there because of crop input costs being up or commodity prices being down a little bit, or some questions in the global trade market or biofuels or whatever it might be, the long-term outlook for agriculture will be strong because people got to eat and people got to drive their cars, and we're there to provide all of the solutions for that.
Yeah, that's good to hear, with things happening and obviously Ukraine, Israel, election season coming. I think everybody's a little bit nervous about where's the economy going.
Yes,
But you're thinking that we're going to stay long-term stable. We might have some ups and downs and roller
right.
coaster ride along the way.
I think that's absolutely the case. And if you hear, anyone in the ag industry, whether it is a farmer leader or elected official or the Secretary of Agriculture, everybody tends to be very optimistic for the future. The one thing that also continues to show up is as we enter into sort of a more of a bio-based economy and a lot of focus on sustainability. What I love about the conversations over the last few years is how uh, first of all, farmers have began to embrace that message, but embrace that message because they're part of the solution. And man, I hold out a lot of hope that as part of that solution, there are additional income streams that a farmer can participate in, whether that's carbon markets or making tillage practices that help their bottom line while also adding to some societal goals, and maybe they should get incented for it. So I'm optimistic for agriculture in the future because of all of these things as well, but we got to get past the harvest this year before we look into the future. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, for sure. And then if we think about manufacturers on the other end, what strategies can they employ to capitalize on this demand? And really, everybody wants the crystal ball, right? But
Right.
where do you see that they can take some opportunities?
Well, one thing that we are really, really good at in the United States in the equipment manufacturing sector, and really any of the sectors, we're really good at producing. And we've proven that over and over again, sometimes to our detriment. There's been ebbs and flows when the markets have been white hot and we have produced and produced and produced and produced and produced, and then all of a sudden you got too much supply. So I think there are some well-worn lessons that the manufacturers are doing a really nice job of trying to manage that supply so they have long-term viability. So you're seeing that some of the public announcements that have been made about metering the supply. I think that's really important, and I think our manufacturers are doing a great job at that. Knowing that we are in a market that is seasonal, you've got to have tractors at planter time, you've got to have combines at harvest time. It's kind of that simple. But also, we don't want to have having a ton of inventory sitting on a dealer's lot doesn't add a lot of value to the industry. So we got to make sure that we time that up as much as possible. So that's the first thing the manufacturers are doing, working very closely with their dealers in the supply to make sure that that is matching up. The other thing, and this is the positive side that couldn't be more exciting, is that when we look at the demand curve for the last few years on tractors and combines, it has actually gone up a little bit because of technology demand. So if you look at farmers want to take advantage of the latest and greatest in precision agriculture and having tractors and combines that are capable of, of implementing those tools right off the gate, that's pretty cool. So seeing those manufacturers innovate, come up with new models, come up with new features that generate more opportunities and operational efficiencies for farmers. Farmers like to take advantage of that, and that's reflected in the sales numbers as well.
Yeah, some great points. And then back to supply chain disruptions. One thing that I've heard a lot over the last few years is manufacturers really thinking about where they're getting things from to
Mm-hmm.
try to shore up their supply chain, instead of depending on everything coming in from overseas.
Right.
So I feel like from what I'm hearing, they're caught up, with those from, the 2020 debacle, but now they've also made it better. Are
Right.
you hearing the same thing?
I am. I mean, I think obviously we learned in 2020 that our food supply is super efficient and super
Mhm.
fragile, and so we fixed some of those things. And it took longer for those supply chain challenges to work themselves out than anyone would have liked for them to, but they did. But the lesson that we learned was, let's add some resiliency into that supply chain. We were working, trying to squeeze as much efficiency, whether it's just in time delivery or other, management practices that work really well. And they work really, really well until there's a black swan event. And I think one
Right.
thing that we learned over the last 20 years is that a lot of black swans out there. And so building that resiliency in is very important, whether that is reshoring when possible, or whether that is just adding a more diverse list of suppliers when possible. Those are the tactics that are being employed across the board to, again, to take it to ensure, because this ag market is so seasonally focused, we can't afford to have a messed up supply chain for more than a couple of months. Uh, the whole world depends on us having a supply chain to eat. So that's why we got it. This is a pretty big weight we have on our shoulders. So we got to make sure we get it right.
Yep. Could not have said that better. That's exactly it. And what about interest rates? I know I'm just hearing all over the board. Nobody knows. It's like shooting an arrow into the wind.
They're either going to go up or down. I don't know.
Right. That's it. That's no insight into that at all.
Well, here's what I would say as it relates to the capital equipment market. I mean, capital equipment's a business decision, and it's a whole lot more fun to buy equipment when there's low interest rates. But
Yeah.
you also need equipment. And so sometimes farmers are making those decisions not because they want to make them at this particular time of the year, but because they have to. And it would be cool if they could wait for those interest rates to come down. But those decisions are business decisions because it's time to get a new tractor. So I don't know what the future is going to hold on those. I think there's lots of people smarter than me are taking a good solid look at that and trying to manage the hotness of the economy and the interest rate and all that together. But I'd say in agriculture, obviously, it figures into the mix for traditional agriculture, but it's not necessarily the sole driver. For the smaller horsepower tractors, for automobiles, it's a different story. But for traditional business-based agriculture, it figures in, but it's not the number one driver.
Good points. And so, where can people find your reports, find the work that is happening at AEM?
Well, the best place to learn about AEM is through our website, aem.org. If you are inclined to read and see research studies and the likes, I would point you directly to aem.org/insights. Then I would also encourage anyone that is wanting to see what's happening in Washington D.C. If you're in agriculture, next week on the first week of May, we will be celebrating modern agriculture on the National Mall with a display of 25 pieces of equipment and about 30 different trade associations telling the story to lobbyists, policymakers, regulators, anyone that will listen about what modern agriculture has to offer. What a cool way for us to tell that story to an audience that doesn't necessarily always hear it and needs to, because they're writing the farm bills and making laws that affect us in rural America.
I love that. Yeah, that's really exciting. Um, and just yeah, like you said, a really creative way to reach a whole new audience for agriculture. I
You bet.
love it. I think we've shared a bunch of that news as well.
You bet. You bet.
And yeah, my last question for you. Um, what drives you? I know you said you're, a farm kid. Um, what are you most passionate about in the work that you do?
Well, my friends will say this to me, and I say it back to them. I got the most interesting job in the world. I'm representing an industry of agriculture, which I'm passionate about. I grew up in, but specifically representing precision agriculture, technology, machinery, where there is so much excitement. I'm passionate about it. It's fun because who knows what this industry is going to look like 5, 10 years from now? It's going to be a lot of fun because we're doing more with less in ways that we can't even dream about. That's what drives me, and that's what I'm passionate about.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for all the great information.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Rumble, or Telegram, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And have a great day. Thanks so much for listening to today's Ag Spotlight episode, where we put the spotlight on people and companies doing great things for the agricultural industry. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, or on your favorite podcasting platform, and give us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on YouTube and Rumble to see the video version of Ag Spotlight. Also, head on over to NorthAmericanAg.com to subscribe to our Industry Connect update newsletter. If you're interested in advertising opportunities, email us at connect@NorthAmericanAg.com. Thanks for listening.